Welcome to the EcoThink podcast, where you join us on a dive into climate change and social justice issues through a STEAM lens. Each episode, we will break down silos, build up amazement, and bring on action. We invite you to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at EcoThink Productions. If you'd like to join the Eco Geeks in supporting this podcast for just a couple of dollars a month, you can do that on Patreon at www.patreon.com/EcoThink. Now let's get on to the show. Hello, EcoThinkers. This is Maya Karelsfeld from the EcoThink podcast. Today I'm just recording a quick mini-sode to talk a little bit more about ocean acidification, because this was a topic that came up in a past episode about species distribution, and we just felt like it would be good to talk a little bit about what ocean acidification even is, and maybe a little bit about where you can find more information. So, this is going to be a fairly quick little episode, and we're definitely going to talk more about this topic in future episodes with interviews and talking with experts, so I'm not going to cover absolutely everything, but I wanted to give you a little bit more of a background on the topic itself. And of course, feel free to put any questions or comments down wherever you're getting this podcast, or you can tweet me at EcoThink Productions on Twitter, same handle for Instagram, and I'm happy to discuss it further with you. So, ocean acidification. This is the process of the ocean, the water in the ocean, becoming more acidic than it was before. And this happens because carbon dioxide, which is in the atmosphere, it's in the air, and it's one of the most common greenhouse gases that anthropogenic climate change releases. So carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere, and it will actually dissolve into the ocean, reacting with the water and creating a substance called carbonic acid. So water isn't the only thing that's in the ocean. Obviously, that's the number one substance, but there's also calcium carbonate and other elements and materials and compounds. And the process of carbon dioxide dissolving into the water is that some of those molecules will bond with some of the other molecules and will actually lower the pH of the water, resulting in a more acidic ocean. This is normally something that's in balance. Well, normally, if you were to go 200 years ago, for example, this would be something that's in pretty reasonable balance, because the carbon cycle of carbon emissions that are released naturally and then absorbed by the ocean, by forests, by other organisms, there's multiple ways that carbon is absorbed, would be pretty much in a net zero kind of balance. It would be a cycle that, much like a rain cycle, it would just kind of continue. My cat's in the background, sorry about that. However, what we're seeing now more and more with anthropogenic or human-caused carbon emissions and human-caused greenhouse gas emissions in general, there is a surplus of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And about a full quarter of carbon emissions are absorbed by the ocean. It's a big sponge. And this is actually more than the ocean can really handle in terms of its ecosystem. So although the water is capable of absorbing a lot of this dissolved carbon dioxide, just in the sense of the chemicals actually will continue doing this, this is a problem for the ecosystem that lives within the ocean. Essentially, what's happening is that the chemical process of ocean acidification makes an important compound called calcium carbonate less available in the water. So this, among other compounds, this is an important compound that a lot of organisms living in the ocean actually make use of in order to survive. They either make use of it to build their exoskeletons, to build shells. Some of them even use it to build a skeleton in their larval state that they then develop out of as they grow up. There's a lot of weird and wonderful things living in the ocean. And these compounds are hugely important for that process. Unfortunately, when this compound calcium carbonate is less available because of ocean acidification, these organisms have a harder time surviving and even become incapable of building a strong shell or a strong exoskeleton or skeleton. So you can imagine this would be very difficult to live with. And this is a process that we're still just learning a little bit about, and that we're not fully sure how exactly it's going to affect every single animal in the ocean. We can definitely make estimates, and there are a lot of researchers working on this. But the ocean's a vast place, and there's a lot of animals to study, so we're not sure how everything's going to react. We know that it's probably going to and is affecting phytoplankton, zooplankton, corals, and invertebrates. Much more than that will probably also be affected, especially if you think about how many animals actually rely on things like phytoplankton and zooplankton as their food source. If those things are diminished because they are incapable of building their skeletons or building their body structures, they will not be available for other animals to eat. There's also some evidence that some animals of potential commercial importance, like oysters, clams, scallops, a lot of these invertebrates that are either farmed or harvested in Canada in particular and around the world, they will be directly impacted by this as well, and currently are being impacted. You can see this in, there's different reports from the scallop farming industry or the oyster farming industry where certain harvests are not going as well as they may have in the past years. And so this is an ongoing issue. So that's kind of what ocean acidification is. That's the problem behind it. If you want to learn more, or if you have kids at home that you think would be interested in seeing a demonstration of what ocean acidification looks like in kind of a lab setting, there's actually a really fun home experiment you can do. All you need is a couple of shells from the beach, some white vinegar, and some tap water. If you go to seaquaria.org, that's seaquaria.org, then they have a great activity called Shell Shocked. And in this experiment, you're going to need vinegar, tap water, and a couple of shells from a beach. And you're going to see just how quickly acid, like vinegar, which is not a particularly strong acid if you think about it, is actually going to affect the calcium carbonate structure of those shells. So I highly recommend checking out that activity. It's great for kids, it's great for all ages, and it's a really simple, easy experiment you can do for pretty much free, as long as you have vinegar in your house. Another couple of things before I let you go. What can you do about ocean acidification? We always want to give you a bit of an action piece on this podcast. So ocean acidification is directly linked to the amount of carbon emissions in our atmosphere. So this means that any action you take to reduce your carbon footprint will help reduce the future impact of this on the ocean. Unfortunately, it's not exactly a 1-to-1 ratio. However, you will be helping by reducing your overall carbon footprint, by talking to your company, to organizations that you support into reducing their carbon footprint. There's many ways to do this, both individually and on an organizational basis. Some options include choosing low carbon transportation options that work for you, whether this is taking public transport, riding a bike, driving an electric vehicle, whatever makes sense for your lifestyle. You could also choose to purchase secondhand instead of purchasing new when you're trying to buy something that's going to have a larger carbon footprint. That way there's less impact in terms of the object itself. You can upcycle items instead of throwing them away. There's plenty of individual actions. I also strongly urge you to talk to people in your company to discuss how you can reduce carbon footprint of your company or your organization. Leave some ideas below if you have any interesting ways to lower your carbon footprint. I'd love to hear about them, and we'll talk about them in future episodes. Also, final thing is I'm very excited to say that in the future we will be interviewing an amazing scientist by the name of Charisse Dupree, who is working for the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and she's actually worked on and released a very recent paper on deep sea ocean acidification and the impact of ocean acidification on deep sea ecosystems, which is fascinating. I'm super excited to talk with her, and I'm excited to share that interview with you. I think it'll have a lot of useful information. So if you have any questions for Charisse, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to include them in our interview. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a lovely day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the EcoThink Podcast. We hope you enjoyed learning something with us today. EcoThink Podcast is an official product of EcoThink Productions. You can find past episodes, transcripts, and show notes on ecothinkproductions.com/podcast. You can support us by following us on Instagram and Twitter at EcoThink Productions and join the Patreon on patreon.com/EcoThink. See you next week.